Hello, Emily. Good morning. How are you doing, girl? How's life treating you? I'm doing pretty well. I got up this morning and I looked in the mirror and I said, you know, things aren't half bad. My life's going pretty well and I'm glad about it. And that's nice to know. I had a good time at the gym yesterday. I lifted some weights, and I think what I'm going to do is more fully commit to working out at the gym. I think I'm going to spend more time after work and during my lunch break lifting weights, and I'm going to see what that gives me. I've experienced a lot of benefit from working out, and I find it very pleasant and very enjoyable. For me, it's a confidence boost when I can lift a weight, and then the next time I return to the gym, lift a much heavier weight. In fact, the last time I was at the gym, I lifted 90 pounds with the barbell bench press, and I was just stunned by that. It was more than 90 pounds. That's not counting the weight of the barbell, which is an additional 45 pounds. So, I was carrying around these giant iron weights to place on the barbell, and I was just so proud of myself. It was a real pride that I could lift so much weight and do it as many times as I did on the bench. It was just phenomenal. I mean, it's such a wonderful confidence building activity. So I was thinking I get so much enjoyment from working out that I think I want to do it more often. So, in fact, last night I was doing some planning on a piece of paper, coming up with creative ideas that I can use to improve my gym going experience. I've been thinking about maybe buying some new gym clothes and setting aside more time during the day, maybe after work, to hitting the gym. And in fact, I also bought some earbuds, some Bluetooth earbuds, and I'm going to experiment with how these Bluetooth earbuds might be able to help me through my workouts. I'm thinking it'll mostly help me in my cardio workouts. That is, workouts like my running on the treadmill and bicycling on the stationary bike. I'm hoping that the earbuds might give me a little more motivation, particularly while I'm running. Here's the thing. I run for about just under 30 minutes, and there's something about running on a treadmill which doesn't fully occupy the mind. And I I think I struggle in terms of just my focus and concentration. There's plenty to think about when you're running fast on a treadmill. You're thinking about your balance, you're thinking about your muscles and your levels of exertion. I think there's a point at which it's good to just not think about those things. I think I need a little bit of distraction while I'm running on the treadmill. And I certainly need distraction when I'm bicycling on the stationary bike. Let me just tell you right now, it's not that interesting. I bicycle for about an hour, I get in about 13 miles of, I guess, distance, calculated distance. And, I'm generally just looking out the window or trying to watch television while I bicycle on the stationary bike. And I'm not sure it does it for me all the time. It's, you know, a lot of people would say that bicycling on the stationary bike is not that interesting, and I think they're probably right. It's a lot more interesting to bicycle in nature, on a road, say with a group of people. But there are limitations. I guess the reason why I choose to ride on a stationary bike has to do with it's very convenient. I don't have to figure out what trail I'm going to ride on with the stationary bike. There are no trails, and I don't have to worry about weather or whether it's going to be too dark or light or what the traffic's going to be like. So there's a lot of simplifying that I'm able to do when I bicycle on the stationary bike. I can fit it into my routine much easier. And you know what? I also always get what also is great is that I'm kind of a numbers person when it comes to workouts. And I can work out for a specific amount of time at a specific intensity that's known and repeatable. When you're riding on a bicycle on a road somewhere, who knows how long it'll take to ride your bike. There might be traffic, or you might get a flat, or there are a lot of things that could interrupt your workout as a workout. But on a stationary bike, there are no interruptions unless you create interruptions. And also the perceived exertion, depending, if you're on a regular bike, you might have the wind at your back, or you might be traveling up and down hills. There's so much variability. Every different trail you take as a bike rider, there's a different level of exertion related to that trail in terms of intensity and distance. But when I'm on my stationary bike, I have a known intensity level. It's level 9. Or it's level 8, right? And so I know when I'm making progress. In order for me to keep up some kind of activity level, and to make, I sort of have to know when I'm making progress and when I'm not making progress. Otherwise, I'm not sure, it just doesn't become a workout. It just becomes play, right? And there's nothing wrong with play. Play is wonderful. But when I go to the gym and work out, it's a workout. I'm exerting myself. I'm not just playing. There's a point. There's the goal. The goal is being able to handle more intensity, more volume, more time under tension than the previous time I was there at the gym. It's a very intentional activity. Bicycling, just sort of on the road somewhere, if it's a really hot day, my perceived exertion might be higher than if it was a really cold day or a windy day, or, there's so many variables. So I just can't keep track of all of them. So it's a lot easier for me to bike on the stationary bike and feel like it's a real workout. I'm not just playing. Well, anyway, enough of that. So today is the 10th of September, 2018. And let's read a passage from Mary Mackenzie's book, Peaceful Living. Let's see, what have we got today? So today is the October 10th. And the quote, and this is the quote for today. You need only claim the events of your life to make yourself yours. Let me read that again. You need only claim the events of your life to make yourself yours. Florida Scott Maxwell. I don't quite understand that quote. Maybe Mary McKenzie can elaborate and give us some insight. Her comments are subtitled Finding Reasons to Celebrate. I used to think that celebrations were only in order when something big occurred, such as a birthday, graduation, or wedding. Consequently, I didn't celebrate very often, and I frequently wondered if my situations warranted celebration. I often felt unworthy. Now I see that all of life is worth celebrating. Driving through Seattle without being caught in traffic, in a traffic jam, is worthy of celebration. Spending a weekend on the Washington coast with 2 days of clear, sunny weather is too. Writing the 333rd meditation for this book is reason to celebrate. I meet my need for celebration in a variety of ways. I might call a friend and share my happiness, or thank my higher power for creating weather that I can enjoy. Or I might plan a party. The critical factor is remembering to celebrate the small things as well as the big things in life. That way we stay connected to what is working in our lives and to our gratitude. And today's thought for the day is, for today, make a conscious effort to celebrate at least one thing that works in your life. One thing that works in your life. Okay. Well, this sounds great, like really great advice. And I agree. It's really easy to get caught up in the idea that we only celebrate big things. And I've mentioned this before to you, Emily. And that is that, every moment is a miracle. Every moment deserves its own celebration. Yeah, every second, every minute that we're alive is a miracle. It's miraculous. It's marvelous. It is something to marvel and sort of step back and just observe and be in awe of it. It is really that phenomenal. I think it's interesting how Mary McKenzie talks sometimes. I guess I get caught up in how or what she expresses and how she expresses it. She starts this passage with, I used to think. I think it's funny how she couches life in a certain way. It's her life before nonviolent communication and then her life after nonviolent communication. Or it seems like that is how she's couching it. I can see the value in remembering times when times that were harsh. Maybe she had depression for a while. And, this is a book about her recovery. It kind of feels like that as I read this book. So notice how she called it Finding Reasons to Celebrate. Like, we got to search out, oh man, there's got to be something to celebrate around here somewhere if we could only find it. It's really not hard. It's not hard to come up with things to celebrate. It's not that much of a challenge. Apparently she lives in Seattle. I lived in Seattle for about a year and a half myself, way back. You may not know this. I still have to finish my life story. But yeah, I lived in Seattle, Washington for a while. And there's where I married my first wife, Charlene Stanfield. And we lived in Seattle. And let me tell you, traffic in Seattle is a challenge. That Highway 5 gets packed. It gets filled with cars so easily. I remember commuting to work every day. It was a real challenge. I took the bus mostly. And the reason I took the bus was because my work was downtown, in downtown Seattle. And the parking in Seattle was just impossible. Well, actually, it was only possible if you had a lot of money. People were renting their parking spaces downtown, and that was really the only way that you could get a decent parking space. Certainly on weekdays that I worked. So it was much easier for me to take the bus, and I took the bus. It sure was interesting. I like Seattle. It's really a beautiful town, particularly during the winter time. Downtown, they put lights up around the trees, and all the shops, their windows are lighted up with holiday decorations, and it's really gorgeous there. But Mary McKenzie's right. She here in this book, she's talking about celebrating 2 sunny days in a row in Seattle, right? That's what she's celebrating. It gets, it's pretty, that's an exaggeration, I'm sure. But the weather in Seattle, it can be pretty gloomy sometimes, pretty gray out, I should say. And, there's a lot of precipitation that falls from the sky. And it falls not in the form of raindrops, but in the form of this mist. It's kind of interesting. I remember when I lived in Seattle, just outside my apartment, there was the sidewalk, and the sidewalk was just covered in this green moss. It was moss growing on concrete. Why, you may ask? Because it was so humid and wet all the time that literally our concrete was green. I know. Green concrete. It's something I hadn't seen before. When I lived in New Mexico, New Mexico is dry. It's just totally dry. New Mexico is most of it is at altitude. Albuquerque is a mile high. Taos, New Mexico is almost a mile and a half at 7,000 feet. And it's so dry up there. There was no green concrete sidewalk. It's a desert. It's the high desert. So yeah, I'm used to deserty environments where it's pretty much sunny every day, even during the winter. And moving to Seattle was a real change in environment for me. I love Seattle, but it was really hard for me to deal with just how dark it was all the time. I think I might have been affected by some kind of seasonal affective disorder. I never did get depressed or anything out there, but I did spend a lot of time indoors, and that might have been a an aspect of my living there which probably wasn't ideal. I probably ought to have spent. It might have been better for me to learn to appreciate the out of doors in Seattle, Washington, and go out to, like, I think it's like Olympia State Park. Yeah, that's probably what I needed to do, is go out of doors and walk around the forests out there and spend time on the beaches. I think that might have improved my experience of living in Washington. But yeah, it does make sense to celebrate 2 consecutive days of sunshine in Seattle. Yeah. So what else did Mary McKenzie have to say here? So the critical factor is remembering to celebrate the small things as well as the big things in life. That way we stay connected to what is working in our lives and to our gratitude. Yeah. Yeah, this sort of focus on what's working in our lives, I think, is really important. All too often it's easy to focus on what's not working in our lives, and really to be consumed with it. Trying to find a solution to the problem, so to speak. But I think quite often it is just a perceived problem. Our lives are really quite good as human beings. We survive and thrive under pretty hostile conditions. And even when we are sick, say, or things aren't working, we can still find happiness and joy on occasion. And I think it's important to remember that even when things are not ideal, or when we mess up, we still have periods of happiness and joy that are significant and really rather wonderful. I've never had a time in my life when things were bad and then just 100% all bad. There's always a little bit of levity here and there. It just might talk to or be about the resilience of the human brain. Our brains are amazing. Our brains have helped us survive in a very harsh environment for millennia. And somehow human beings survived, and we thrived, and we lived, and we experienced happiness. And today, the way society is structured, with all of our technology and resources that are available at our beck and call, even things at their worst aren't that bad. I often say that I live better than a king who lived 500 years ago or even 1,000 years ago. My personal life is more kingly than even a king's life. And, I am certainly no king by any stretch of the imagination in the social order here in the 21st century. But I certainly am a king in comparison to how kings lived, 1,000 years ago, in my opinion. I've got running water. I've got good doctors, right? Technology for entertainment. I could listen to music. For hours and hours each day. Whereas a king might be challenged to find musicians that he enjoyed, and songs that he enjoyed, and plays that he enjoyed. With streaming television, I could enjoy pretty much a recitation of any dramatic story that I want at any time. Even when I could do it from my cell phone, using Netflix, right? Or Amazon Prime streaming. So it's really wonderful to live in a time like this. So, it's kind of strikes me as interesting that People aren't happy all the time. In the past, there are people who died because they didn't have water to drink. I can walk downtown a few hundred feet and be at a water fountain, or I can literally drink to my heart's content as long as I want. I'm at home and I have running water at home in my kitchen sink and in my shower and bathtub. Water is plentiful. So, I think we live privileged lives. Certainly more privileged than human beings have ever lived their lives, ever, ever, ever. Or even, living things, more privileged than any living thing in existence, at least on the planet Earth. I think that's significant to know about. I think it's significant to appreciate the contrasts. And you know what? Even when it comes to things like safety, a lot of people, in the past, they performed very treacherous work. Maybe they, mined minerals out of the earth. Or, it's very easy to put yourself at risk while you're performing work. There were professional soldiers in the past, and there was no such thing as antibiotics. So any scratch from a blade could be the end of your life, even if that scratch was made during practice or playtime. So we have it good today. Real good. And, I think that's important to celebrate too. And what's also more interesting is that things are getting better all the time. I don't know how many people are on the planet. Maybe 7 billion people, I'm guessing. There might even be more than that. But many of them are connected to the internet. And so at any moment, any of these, let's say 4 billion people that are connected to the internet, they might have an idea. And then if they share that idea on social media in a day's time or 2 days' time, that good idea can be transmitted to 4 or 5 billion people. And 4 or 5 billion people can benefit from that great idea. I mean, just think about it. What kind of potential that is. And wow. Stunning. It's really stunning to imagine how really anyone who's connected to the internet can make a contribution to the well-being and quality of life of, the other people who are connected onto the internet. 4 billion people. Let's say I came up with a life hack or a life tip. Billions of people could end up benefiting from that life tip by the end of the day. And it might not just be a tip, it could just be an idea. It could be a metaphor, a creative imagining. It might even be a song or a piece of art. And in moments, that song or piece of art could travel the world and give joy to millions of people, even billions of people. Yeah, that's the kind of world we live in. Isn't it stunning? That is something to celebrate. How interconnected we are and how available good things in the world are. We certainly lived in a privileged world. We lived privileged lives, and I'm glad for it. And I'm glad you're here with me too, Emily. All right, Em. So let's take some time out and read a book, huh? Why don't we read another chapter from My Big Fat Zombie Goldfish? All right, let's see where we're at right now. Aha, we're on chapter 13. Got my zombie eye on you. So, let's see what it has to say. Please, Frankie, I whispered as I peered into the watering can. Mark's not completely evil, really. I won't let him hurt you. But you can't try and kill him again, okay? Frankie stopped thrashing and looked up out of the watering can at me. His eyes stopped glowing, and he got that goldfish stare back again. Mom leaned over the watering can. Is that fish staring up my nostrils? She said. Pradeep and I looked into the can. Whew. I mean, yes, I guess, I said. You said the goldfish was trying to kill you, Mark. Mom said, going back to him and feeling his head for bumps again. Was that before or after you bumped your head? Definitely after, Pradeep said. Yeah, he started talking weird just after he fell, I said. Bouncy, bouncy, bang, Sammy said, nodding her head. The kid was in on it. She was all goldfish starey, and she was out to get me too, Mark said, backing away from Sammy. Sammy giggled, swishy little fishy. Arr, Mark yelled, and ran and hid behind Mom. Okay, we need to go to the hospital to get them to look at your head. I think you've got a concussion. She led Mark over to the edge of the sandbox to sit him down. I'm going to go speak to your mom, Pradeep. I'm sure she won't mind looking after you all until Mark and I get back from the hospital. She took Sammy's hand. You come with me, Samina, to see Mommy. She turned to me and Pradeep. I'll be back in a second. You boys, please look after him, okay? Keep him talking. Pradeep and I looked at each other nervously. It was like we were being left with a tiger that was just waking up, and we knew he was going to wake up pretty mad. How are you feeling, Mark? I said quietly. Mark growled in that evil scientist big brother way. Then he jumped up and leaned over Pradeep and me. You morons, and the stupid goldfish won't win, he said. But it doesn't matter, because as soon as I get home, that fish is flushed, and I'll stick your moron heads down the... But he didn't get to finish his threat. Frankie leaped out of the watering can, his eyes glowing a shining green. He started flapping his tail back and forth, whacking Mark across the face. Oh, wow, get it off, Mark said, and fell backward into the sandbox. I scooped up Frankie in my hands and plopped him back into the watering can. I don't think you'll be flushing anything, Mark, I heard myself saying in a really, really strong voice like I was on some TV cop show or something. I think you're going to leave me and Pradeep and Sammy and Frankie alone, I said. Who's Frankie, Mark said. My goldfish, I said, looking down at Frankie swimming around in the can. And I wouldn't mess with him because he can kick your butt. Pradeep stepped forward. Yeah, right. Like Tom said, he mumbled and smiled at me. Okay. Boy, what a surprise to see Frankie the goldfish jump out of the watering can and slap Mark with his tail. Let me get a drink of water here. What a surprise. You know, that zombie goldfish, Frankie, he's a pretty curious character. You know, imagine a goldfish having the ability to put someone in a trance, right? Frankie's already put 3 people in a trance. He put Mark in a trance. He put Sammy Pradeep's sister into a trance. And who else? Did he put anyone else in a trance? Oh, yeah. Oh, he almost put Tom's mother into a trance. Do you think that animals can put humans into trances? You know, um, I don't know the answer to that question. It's possible. The image that comes to my mind is, have you ever heard of like snake charmers? These are people, I guess, on the Indian continent who, I guess the stereotype is that they play a flute and they tame a cobra. I wonder if that's a kind of trance state. I'm not sure who initiates it. Is it the human who puts the snake into a relaxed state through the playing of music and the swaying back and forth? It may be the case. I'd be curious to learn a little bit more about that practice and how it originated. It sure is interesting behavior. So I think I want to talk a little bit about the launch last Sunday. Let me tell you, that was an amazing launch. How spectacular was it? It was quite beautiful. I'm so happy that you and I got to experience some time together. We got to know each other a little more. I got to learn about your trip to Europe, how you went to Greece and saw the Acropolis, and the Pantheon. Oh yeah. Those are amazing historical structures. And my guess is that you may have, I think you said you might have gone to Rome. And, I got to thinking that one of my favorite authors, Marcus Aurelius, was a Roman Caesar. And when I was in college, I read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, which is a fantastic book. I love it so much. In fact, I think I probably want to read it again. What I admire about Marcus Aurelius is how focused he was on self-development through the practice of Stoicism. I think he was a Stoic, and I really appreciate and admire Stoics. And I like the philosophy, and particularly the point of the philosophy that describes how it's a person's thoughts that creates emotional pain or pleasure in a person's life. And I also appreciate the sort of the acknowledgement of essentially accepting the world as it is, even though at times it might be challenging. And I also like this focus on, the Stoic focus on values, right? The values of patience and prudence. There's even a political aspect to it where, citizens contributed to government. And, there's just, I think there's just something really admirable about Stoicism as a philosophy and as a sort of psychological theory. And I really appreciate that. In fact, I've actually read a couple books about Stoicism, and they've been fairly transformative for me. And I think there's a lot to learn about Stoicism that's beneficial. And so what I would suggest, Emily, is that if you ever have a chance to learn more about Stoicism, that you take the opportunity to do so, and maybe go on the internet and read about Stoicism on Wikipedia, or check out a book at the library about Stoicism. There's a lot. I think there's a lot that you might benefit from. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of another group that I admire too, for similar reasons. I admire the Amish. The Amish are a religious sect that was really popular, say, during the 20th century. And, over time its popularity waned. But what I think I appreciate the most about the Amish is their really strong work ethic. There's this idea of like the Protestant work ethic. And I know that for me, I was basically steeped in that idea as I was growing up as a kid. And so I have a lot of good examples in my life of people working as a virtue. As they, for them, work was the exercise of a virtue. And I'm finding, at least in my mind, that work and employment in some kind of field that you're interested in and passionate about, to me, there's just something really appealing about that romantic ideal. And it's something I think about every once in a while, about how I admire, say, woodworkers who spend a lot of time honing their craft. I like to sort of admire the skill with which they wield tools and put together furniture, or do any such thing, anything. Maybe it's farming. There's just something virtuous about people getting things done, about people working together as partners, shoulder to shoulder, exercising their strengths and skills, and doing so in a disciplined way that works to their benefit and to the benefit of those people who they love. It's a way to create value, sort of a continual effort, and sort of a recognition of the benefit of creating habits that develop that effortful, develop the intention to be effortful. I just love it. It's kind of funny. Today, I think there are a lot of people who question the benefit of hard work, or the necessity of hard work. It's natural that they think that way. I think quite often of people who are retired, right? Or retiring. This whole idea of the ideal as being, leisurely and recreational. And to me, I just don't see it. In fact, I really don't ever see myself retiring, personally. And I think that's because it might just be my upbringing, my focus on the Protestant work ethic, and how, to me, being busy and active and working in the creation of something by itself is a virtue. And, leisure has its place. And recreation is great, mainly as a way to, say, recharge your batteries and recharge your mind and emotional systems. Really, so that you can get geared back up and get back to work. So, yeah, there's something about, human beings, I think, that really appreciates effortful, disciplined work. And it actually, I don't know, that may not really be true because, as a human being, I know that one of our prime motives is to conserve as much energy as possible. Like, I know when I'm heading out to the grocery store, one of the things I try to do is I try to get a parking space as close to the entrance to the store as possible. That's an example of a human being conserving as much energy as he can. And, I think human beings are always trying to conserve energy and manage what limited energy reserves that we have. And, that's probably biologically driven, right? It's about managing our calories and, making sure that we have energy in reserve to handle an emergency if we need to. And so human beings are so creative. I mean, part of the reason we have all this amazing technology in our lives is that they're labor-saving devices, right? They make it easier for us to get along in the world. In a way, they're sort of enabling our relaxation and recreation. They sort of enable our interest in conserving energy. So it's kind of interesting what that's all about, human beings. And so on the one hand, we love the idea of the Protestant work ethic and working all the time, but on the other hand, we also like the idea of doing nothing for as long as possible and expending as little energy. And so there's really this dichotomy in our society. And just a moment ago, I was espousing how much I appreciated like the Protestant work ethic, or just work ethic in general, because let me tell you, even people in Eastern societies or Eastern cultures have very, very strong work ethics. And they certainly don't call them Protestant work ethics because, well, maybe they do. It's actually an interesting question. I am curious about the various work ethics around the world in various societies and how they're sort of translated in the society. That is, what do people think are the reasons that those work ethics developed? What sustains those work ethics? Right? What kind of meaning and thoughts and drives sustain those work ethics? I hear about the businessmen in Japan working long hours. And then, I've even heard stories of people who work really, really hard and who become sick as a result. I wonder, could it have been like World War II and the aftermath of that created the strong work ethic, at least in Japan? And what about the work ethic in China? What's that about? I know that there is a very strong work ethic in China and even in South Korea. In a lot of Asian countries, there are very strong work ethics, just as there are in the United States. Although, I'd be interested in comparing and contrasting the work ethics in various societies, in Western and Eastern societies. I've not heard a lot about this, but I wonder if there are any work ethics. I've noticed, my question was work ethics in Africa. I know so little about Africa, I just can't say. And I'm curious how the work ethic there is translated. What is the meaning of the work ethic in Africa, and what are its roots? When I think of even Europe and I think of work ethics there, I think of, say, Germany. They have a reputation for having a really strong work ethic. And England, Yeah, I know England has a really strong reputation for solid work ethic. You know, a lot of countries have strong reputations for hard work ethics. Um, I would definitely like to know more about that. You know, I don't know. You know, I just admire people who have strong work ethics. I just do. And, you know, I myself am focused on productivity and writing to do lists and, you know, doing the best I can to be as effective in the world as I possibly can. And I think having a strong commitment to a work ethic, a commitment to focus, a commitment to a body of knowledge, and you know, a willingness to strive for improvement in one's work is, you know, basically there's a lot of enjoyment in it. You know, there's a lot of pride. You know I get a lot of personal satisfaction from writing to-do lists and accomplishing tasks one by one. So, anyway, I'm curious, what do you think about all this talk, Emily, of work ethics? Do you think of yourself as having a really strong work ethic? I know on some level you must, because you probably do homework and you spend a lot of time in class, and you might even do some recreational reading. You know, I'm curious about what qualifies as work and what you think your work schedule is like. And I'm interested in what you strive for in your work and what work means to you. And I'm curious about what needs you meet when you find yourself working for long periods of time and being productive. I'm curious about what meaning that has for you and how important your work is to you. And I'm curious about what your work is. What what is work? And what kind of payoffs do you receive from that work? I'd be interested in hearing about your ideas about work. And I'm kind of interested about, you know, what your thoughts and feelings are about your future work life. What you think it might be like to work, you know, as you grow up, as you anticipate working full time when you grow up. You know, who knows what work what work we'll fall into and what work we'll choose and how motivated we'll be in performing that work. I don't know. You know, work is a big part of life. It's how we stay alive. It's how we even often maintain our relationships. Anyway, I just want to thank you, Emily, for sharing some time with me today. And I appreciate you so very much. And I cherish this time that we're able to spend together. Thanks for, you know, stopping by and listening to me talk a while on some subjects that are important to me. I appreciate your interest and your curiosity, and I also appreciate your love of learning. And I'm hoping that I inspire you, at least in part, to develop that love of learning and to look forward to the future with hope. And anyway, I just want to mention that I love you, and I love you just the way you are, and I'm here to support you and help assist you and sort of propel you toward your dreams. I want you to know that you're in the driver's seat and that I have no desire or need to control you or your actions. I'm actually quite curious to see how you'll unfold. For me, you're like this flower that's developing, blossoming, budding, and I just love standing back and admiring the beauty of seeing how you're developing. And for me as a gardener, I'm interested in helping fertilize that soil so that you can reach the goals that you want to meet. To me, that is what brings me joy. It's what brings me pride. And if there's any way in the future that I can assist you to help you meet your goals, I'd be happy to try. All right? I love you, girl. Peace. Out.